for this sixth movie that I'm going to name from my list of 10 flicks that really made a big impact on me, all of a sudden it's going to get a little darker, a little grimmer, and definitely a lot scarier. Dun, dun, dun! I feel like I should have some suspenseful music here. Actually, the best thing would be to have the theme from this movie, because it is, I find, one of the most horrifying horror film scores that there is. As soon as I hear this music, it's very much like like Psycho. It just has that gripping effect on me. And the movie I'm talking about is from 1973, I believe. But I did not see it in 1973. I was 3. So if my parents had let me see this movie, I think I would have probably been removed from their home. The Exorcist. A book that I've also read quite a bit of, but I never did finish, I'm embarrassed to say. And I enjoyed what I read, but and it was different. There was a lot more to it. William Peter Blatty wrote a really good horror novel. But I did not complete it. What a wonderful movie. It's true. This is what I measure all horror films against. And I think growing up, I was a kid who went to a lot of drive-in movies. I mentioned that when I talked about American Graffiti, that, it was normal to go with my parents to go to the drive-in movies. And in the late 70s, a lot of times that double feature, one of them would be, if not both, a horror film. The Fog. I remember seeing Terror Train and Prom Night and all of those films that were slasher type of movies. And I kind of got a kick out of it. Yeah, there were times when they could just naturally scare you by the way they jump at the screen or change the scene. And sure, that I would buy into the same gimmicks as everybody else, but they never really scared me like I think they were supposed to, especially someone in her, like 8 years old or whatever, watching it. But I never realized why that was until I started thinking more about this challenge and realized this movie, The Exorcist, had to be in it. And I think it's because I compared everything to it. It's not the first horror film I remember seeing. The first horror film I ever remember seeing, and I contemplated including it in this list, was The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And that has a story behind it too, and I don't have time to go into it. But so I really had an affection for the creature that was in our Oscar-winning film from this year, because I could relate to there's just a charm in that character that reminded me of The Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I have a little bit of affection for that movie. But there wasn't anything scary about that film. Even as a little toddler, I knew that wasn't a scary film. And by the time I saw The Exorcist in a TV version of it, sometime in the mid to late 70s, even though it was censored, it was still scary. And I recall I had a half bath off of my bedroom, and I was on the one side of the home, and my parents were on the other. And I remember brushing my teeth at the sink, and I could look over and see my bed, and just looking over there and just making sure there wasn't anyone sitting on my bed, lying there, ready to hurl at me or start speaking in tongues or doing anything else horrifying, because I was scared. I didn't usually get scared from movies, but that night I wasn't a kid who was scared of the dark. I didn't worry about things under the bed or in the closet. I wasn't that kind of kid. I knew it was all fake. I knew it was all imaginary. But boy, that movie left me thinking, what if? And I know that the impact it had on me was, aside from the fact that I measured every horror film against it and nothing ever compared to it. I felt like it was just truly the scariest thing I'd ever saw then and since. But it led me to read for about a year in school. I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. I think it was 8th. Horror books, the horror genre. And I started with Salem's Lot, Stephen King, and I read a bunch. The Omen, I loved The Omen by David Seltzer. I thought it was fantastic. And I hated the movie, even though I love Gregory Peck, but it was a horrible, horrible movie. But it was a terrific book, and I read others as well. And I didn't get quite into Stephen King like I would have thought. I mean, I think he's got a great personality, and I love when he does an interview, but I haven't gotten into his books like I'd hoped. I'm going to give him another shot. But The Exorcist, man, as a movie, tremendous. Nothing compares to it, I don't believe. And if you haven't seen it, you owe yourself to see it. It's one of the greatest horror films ever.